Not your favorite anymore, huh?
Okay, is everybody ready? Ready? Natalie, you're ready? Good evening and welcome to our special school board meeting, public hearing for our final budget. Would you rise for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Challenger, do we have any public input cards? Okay, seeing none. Dr. Moxley?
Yes, we are here tonight. We have two topics that will require board approval. This is our final budget hearing. The first item is regarding the final millage rate, and the second one will be adopting the final budget for the 15-16 school year, and I'll turn it over to the chair.
I declare this meeting as a public hearing of the School Board of Lake County, Florida, for the adoption of the final millage rates and the final budget for the 2015-16 fiscal year. Superintendent, please read the statement required on the millage for the record.
The first substantive issue to be discussed is the rollback rate. The rollback rate is defined as the millage rate necessary to generate the same amount of money that was raised the prior school year, but using the new property values after adjusting for new construction. The total millage to be levied is more than the rollback rate by 2.60%. The required local effort millage rate to be levied is more than the rollback rate by 2.28%.
This is a public hearing. Does anyone wish to address the board concerning this increase? Seeing none. CFO.
Very brief presentation, board. We have been through the first public hearing. We're required to do two. This is a very prescriptive process. We have to do the millage rates first. We have to do the millage rates first, followed by the board.
The crowd cannot hear you.
Crowd,
Better?
There you
Yay!
go.
Just what you're dying to hear. As I said, very prescriptive process. We've already had the very first public hearing. This is our second public hearing. It's within the 81 days that's required under the trim. The first action you need to take is on the millage rate, which is exactly the same as it was in the first hearing. The second action you need to take is approving the final budget. I've provided you the changes that were made between the first hearing and the second hearing. And if you have any questions, we'll discuss it when we get to that item.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to recommend that the board adopt Resolution 2015-08, determining final millages to be levied for the fiscal year 2015-16 as supported by FLDOE Form ESE 524. Included are required local effort of 4.949 mils, basic discretionary of 0.748 mils, and capital outlay millage of 1.500 mils. This is for a total of 7.197 mils. The revenues generated by this levy total general operating $99,921,630, capital outlay $26,309,013 for a total of $126,230,643.
May I have a motion on the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve Resolution 2015-08, determining final millages to be levied for the fiscal year 2015-16 as supported by FLDOE Form ESE 524.
So moved.
Second.
This is a public hearing. Does anyone wish to address the board concerning the millages? Is there any discussion before the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Unanimously approved.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to recommend that the board approve Resolution 2015-09, adopting the final budget for the 2015-16 fiscal year in the amount of $554,097,489 as supported by FLDOE Form ESE 139 District Summary Budget.
May I have a motion on the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve Resolution 2015-09, adopting the final budget for the 2015-16 fiscal year in the amount of $554,097,489 as supported by FLDOE Form ESE 139, District Summary Budget.
So moved.
Second.
This is a public hearing. Does anyone wish to address the board concerning the tentative budget? Seeing none, discussion?
I've got a question. Oh,
1 second, excuse me.
Yes.
Forgive me, there's a typo. This is concerning the final budget,
Not tentative
not
budget.
tentative.
Sorry. Concerning the final budget.
Thank you for that correction. Mr. Dodd.
yes. I know you had provided us the new numbers based on the percentages of, how our budget is
Yeah.
allocated to each of the categories today. And I noticed that those are different than the last round we saw.
They are.
Can you explain what might have been added to the instructional category that wasn't there previously?
As I explained in the memo that I sent out to you, when we did the final closing on the books, one of the adjustments we had to make was for the benefits that were associated with the health insurance fund. Because that's an internal service fund, they get added to the general fund and reported together. So what we had looked at before in mid-August, when I had done that, was based on preliminary closing numbers. And now that we're farther along in the process, we have the numbers that I believe will be the actual final numbers on the financial statement that we bring to you next week.
But the numbers dating back to 2012-13 are different by like 5%. So I'm not even just looking at last year, but really across the board. The 2012-13 was 55.34%, and now on the new one it says it's 60.13. So I'm just wondering what is driving the change in that category.
And forgive me, let me go through this.
What page are you on, Mark?
Well, I'm looking at, let's see, it's page 16 of the document we were given a couple weeks ago compared to the first page that we received today with the
Okay.
A6 up in the corner.
Okay.
Because, forgive me, the first part that you're looking for is the operating pre-K expenditures. When we went through this analysis, that operating includes both food service and our federal. The analysis that I provided you today was just for the general fund. Because until we get our grants settled down, we can't go through and
Okay.
do this exercise for all funds combined.
All right.
When we talked about it before, we talked about paring down to what it was that we considered operating, and that is the general fund, the food service fund, and the federal grant funds together. But then to kind of pare that down even farther, because quite frankly, for the budget process, we spend the majority of our time looking at the general fund. We went down that one more layer.
Okay.
That's the difference.
So
If you go to
these
the
numbers
ones in
appear
here,
higher because you factored
we've
out
added those
other
in.
things.
If you go back
Okay.
to the general
Got it.
fund ones that were in that same document, they match what I gave you.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's my only question.
Okay.
I mean, I think I still have the concern on whether or not this budget is moving us in the right direction in terms of making academic achievement a priority. As we look at the instructional total, it's really been pretty flat over the last few years. And, I might unfortunately say our, district performance in terms of academic achievement also has been relatively flat. So, I just don't know that this budget is moving in the right direction necessarily.
Okay. Any other comments? No further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
So it passes 4-1. Superintendent?
Okay, I want to make sure. Okay, we have that one. You have that? Okay, right here.
We're done.
Okay, this concludes the required action for the final public hearing on the 2015-16 final millage rates and budget for Lake County Schools. All the required documents will be transmitted to the Florida Department of Education, the Florida Department of Revenue, and the Lake County Tax Collector's Office, which is required by law.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Ma'am, that's it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We're moving on to item number 4, which is, okay, am I doing something wrong here? You're looking
No,
at me.
It's board member comments.
Board member comments.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I was
okay, I
doing.
didn't.
It's
You're not
number
on my
4.
agenda. Yes, ma'am.
Board member comments. Mr. Mathias.
I want to speak about, for just a minute, I'm going to give you an update on where we stand with our impact rate and discuss for half a minute some of the events of the last week, 6 weeks before we were able to get together. And it had to do, I think, with an article that Livy had written, which was prompted by a local blogger reporting that vendors were being mishandled, or I don't remember all the terms that are used, but government corruption and all those kind of things that bring a lot of intensity. And it was prompted by a letter, apparently, or an email, that Casey Kesselring, who is the founder of the PAC called Impact Lake, and he sent this letter to us, to all of us. And when you read it, it really is a call to arms for us to get involved and to get engaged. It gives some very specific ways of how we're supposed to do it, and that we're not government officials, but we are leaders, and let's make no bones about that. We know how important this is to our school system. Unfortunately, either a county commissioner or a school board member sent this email to Don, and it created this fever of activity and him notifying the commercial. And I will say this, that I have not manhandled or forced anyone. It wouldn't be expected, but it is expected for us to raise money, because that's how a campaign is won. And we have $50,000. We need 80 just to get to a point where we can get 3 mailings out. So I would say that as leaders, not school board members, that I would ask that you join Casey, that they cannot carry the heavy weight. And that right after our media meeting, where we're going to speak to the media, that sort of backfired on me. So if board members feel like they're inclined to speak against the initiative, I would prefer that they not speak to the media then anymore. So I will tell you that the Benedict Arnold that sent the email, that in time that will be exposed, and that to intentionally, I take it personally, it was an intentional attempt to derail the initiative that we so desperately need. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Ms. Brandenburg?
I had a chance to visit all 9 of my schools over the first 2 weeks of school, and all in all, things are going extremely well. There are a few schools that need a teacher here, a teacher there. We seem to have many more kindergarten children again this year than we've had in a while. Seems like we've got more students in K through 3 this year, and so, which is, I know Lori and her staff are working very hard. One of the things that I picked up, I was talking to one of the principals who has a child, well, has a a son who now is teaching in our school system, and he was saying that it's been a real eye-opener for him, that it's not just a matter of going into the classroom and teaching, but it's no one's taught him about classroom management. I mean, he didn't learn this in college. He didn't learn about classroom management. He didn't learn, some of the things that, he now is responsible for doing, and how much he appreciates the coaches that we have in the schools to help them with understanding all of the different things that they now are responsible for. He also has a teacher who's next door to him who's become his mentor, and he relies on her very, very much so. And I thought, well, we hear that we have teachers who leave the field within the first 5 years. Some of them get disengaged because they never knew all of the other demands that's going to be put on their time. And that's not us, but it's just them having a better understanding of what their jobs are. So one, I think that the coaches are very important in our schools to be helping our teachers. Two, I was wondering if maybe at a workshop, maybe a future workshop, maybe after the first of the year, could we invite some teachers, a first-year teacher, someone that's been teaching 2 or 3 years, someone, who worked out of field, worked for a big company and now is a teacher, to hear from them what their challenges are, and also not only what their challenges are, what was a surprise to them when they got into the classroom. Because we keep hearing about how many teachers that we lose. If we can make sure that we are giving them the tools and the resources that they need to really become good teachers and want to stay in the teaching profession, that I think it would be beneficial for us to be able to hear from them. And so I think that would be just a real learning opportunity for each of us, so that when we are doing our budget, when we are talking about positions, that, we have a better understanding of what these newer teachers are required to do, that they just were not taught in college.
Good idea. Write it
So,
down.
I would like to see us do that on a future workshop.
Okay. Thank you. Is that it?
Yep.
Mr. Dodd?
Yeah, I certainly think getting teacher input would be a fantastic idea. And I'm not necessarily certain that we've been completely void of it. I made the transition from the business world and, spent 3 years in the classroom. And so I can tell you all about the challenges that teachers are facing out there. And actually one of them, it was on my topic tonight to talk about, and that is the bell schedule. I guess that this is something that falls into the day-to-day operations of the district and doesn't necessarily come before the board. Is that right? And I think that we'd be remiss if we did not have a discussion about the bell schedule, because it continues to be a challenge. In my personal example, just this afternoon I was struggling to even get into the parking lot of my child's school at 3:45. Teachers were off at 3:30, but there were still 12 buses lined up waiting to get in too. Car rider line still holding strong, but that was on the other side of the school, so that didn't even impact the bus line. But for 12 buses to still be in the queue at 3:45 is a big challenge. And it seems to be unrealistic to dismiss a school of 1,000 students in just 15 minutes. And I know I've talked about this one before. And I've kind of prompted some questions there in the context of the strategic finance plan that we've looked at, that teachers are not making any use of that 15 minutes there at the end of the day, because their room is still jam-packed full of kids. They don't get the time to reset, and we just continue to push more and more expectations on them that they're going to do outside of contract hours, which no teacher knows their job ends when the bell rings. That everybody knows going in, you're going to take stuff home, but it's become the expectation and the requirement of this district that anytime a teacher wants to call a parent in the afternoon, it's going to happen on their own time, never during their contracted time. And so that's where I think would be worthy of a discussion. I know we can't change that for this year. The year's already going strong, but we're a couple weeks in, we still have 12 buses lining up at 3:45. It just doesn't seem reasonable for a teacher to be able to get the work that they need done when they've got that kind of challenge.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah. Thanks.
Ms. Luke?
I think a workshop discussion would be great. I bet we could come up with something to work that situation out where teachers would have that time, because it is critical. I also would love to have a discussion on a stipend or something in that regards with our coaches. I know I've said that before with our school-based literacy coaches, CRTs, those support people that work so hard throughout the year. I don't think it's the talent development pipeline. I know I've spoken a couple times with some staff, and I like the idea of that. I think it should be true that teachers stay true, that the teachers need a reward for staying in the classroom, but just the thought of the people that are working alongside of these teachers that are working just as hard, that are teachers, they're side by side, they make the same salary depending on where they are, what their contract is, and that they're not going to get compensated for that work is a little bit hard to swallow. And the Umatilla football game was awfully exciting Friday night. They didn't pull it out this time, but I see it coming, so keep it up.
They'll get there. Okay, anything else? Okay. I did visit 6 schools. I haven't visited all of them yet, but everything is going really well, I believe, in the schools. And the kids are just adorable. The elementary schools are definitely the place to go and watch the kids. But On the teachers, and I did not receive any concerns from any of them yet, so that's a good thing for the start of the year. The only one I have received was down in South Lake about the bell schedule down there. So that is a good discussion we probably need to have, so. All right, Dr. Moxley?
Yes, I have two items that I put at your places. One is a copy of the press release that came out from the commissioner regarding the validity study. I did send that to you electronically, and I did make a copy of the executive summary, so you have that. If you go back to the electronic transference of the email, you can click on that link and actually go to the full study if you are so inclined to read that. I think the executive summary pretty much captures the essence of it. I don't have any other information to share with that. That may be something you want to talk about at a future workshop. Our superintendent's meeting is in the fall. It's the third week in September. I'm sure this will be a point of discussion there, so maybe we would set that after that meeting in hopes that I have maybe some additional information. I also did send electronically to you, and in this packet, I also gave you the superintendent's statement that we issued at the same time of that. The other document that I put at your place is, Mr. Dodd, you had asked for this. You wanted a comparison of offerings at our high schools. What you have there is the first page, or first couple pages, is the AP offerings at each of our high schools. The second document is the CTE offerings at each of our high school. And the third document are the certified CAP academies, career and professional academies. Usually they're one and the same, but there are instances where we offer a CTE program that is not a career academy. So there may be some on the one list that aren't on the other, but for the most part, we're striving to have all of our CTE offerings certified with that. So, but as you're going through that, the reason it may not be certified yet is there may be a new teacher. It may be like the South Lake High School has a new GIS, the geospatial program, and we're going to have to take that, over the year. We'll have to work towards getting that certified, so you're not going to see that on the list. So I wanted you to have that. You're welcome. If there's anything else you see after reading it that you need more information, we'll be happy to get that for you. Keep in mind when you look at the list, especially with the CTE arenas, that is really driven by looking at the high wage, high skilled data that comes out of workforce. I don't know that it's called Workforce Central Florida. That's and the needs of that community and the jobs that are in that specific community. And there are some uniquenesses from different areas of our district of what's served there. So a lot of that's driven there. The other thing that is driven there is by student interest and choice. So they, a lot of times, if there may be some demand for it, but if the students aren't interested and don't take it, that does impact some of the offerings. And then the third item is size. So in some of the schools, the smaller high schools are going to have smaller elective options. And really then it gets back to some of our high schools have very strong arts choices that draw a lot of students, and they may be heavier in that than they are in another. So those are just some factors when you're looking at it to keep in mind. The only other item that I wanted to share with you is just an announcement to be transparent. At our last regularly scheduled board meeting, there was an agenda item where you approved out-of-state travel to Washington, D.C. for one day. It was on Monday. Actually, the two people were to leave Sunday evening, and it was a one-day meeting in Washington, D.C. for one of our I-3 grants, the leadership grant. And at the board table, I made a change because it was listed that it was for me and Marilyn Doyle to attend, and I made a change that it was for Katie Pearson. According to policy, you have to approve the expenditure of travel for those two, and you did, for two people to go, but the names have changed. We got another clarification that the facilitators training that Katie Pearson is to attend is going on also, but that is in Orlando. I am required to go to the one in DC. So for transparent, it's not any action you need to take, but I wanted to be very transparent that it's back to what the original memo said. So I will attend that meeting as required. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, a couple of people have asked me about the bill of costs that showed up in one of the newspaper articles, and I got a call from a magazine or something today about that, calling it fees. It's not fees. We're not getting fees back. These kinds of constitutional claims, and I'm talking about Carver Middle School, those type of constitutional claims are made for the plaintiffs to potentially get fees. The government entity usually, unless it can show something fairly severe, which we don't think is available in this case, doesn't get fees. The $7,000 were costs, were expenses related to the trial. They were costs of depositions, cost of serving people, travel expenses for the witnesses, that kind of thing. And we expect that that will be paid with, and we expect that the clerk or the judge will enter an order awarding those without any discussion, and we expect that to be paid fairly quickly. The ACLU has already asked us who to make the check out to, so it's not going to be some contested matter that's coming down the road. I did want to point it out because it's not fees. We are not recovering our attorney's fees in that. That's all.
Thank you very much. The only other thing is September 14th, we are going to have a workshop at 2 o'clock. You have that on your calendars. And then the regular meeting will be at 6 p.m. That's all there is. This meeting is adjourned.